Welcome to the EndurHunt podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lukosevic. Join me as I share my experiences as an emergent hunter, offer advice on how to overcome challenges, and pursue your passion for hunting. This is episode 1, the very first episode of the EndurHunt podcast, From Anti-Hunting to Hunter, where I want to share my story, getting into hunting from a non-hunting family and growing up really as someone who was against hunting. To get things started, I thought I should just give some background on who I am. I'm Andrew Lukosevic. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I live in Texas with my wife and our 2 dogs. And I have a full-time job as of this recording, which is February 9th, 2023. I have a full-time job, and I am doing this as a sort of passion project on the side. I did not grow up hunting. I started hunting in 2018, and I'm about to get into that story. I appreciate you taking the time to sit down and watch this and learn a little bit about me and my journey. I grew up in New Jersey, relatively in the suburbs. We moved around a lot. And I did not grow up in a hunting family. I didn't grow up in a shooting family. In fact, I didn't touch a firearm outside of like a BB gun until I joined the military. The closest thing that I did to the outdoors was going fishing and going walking and hiking with my dad. That was one thing that I did growing up, was I spent time outdoors just walking around hiking. We didn't really camp a lot, but I did enjoy connecting with nature. I don't know where these thoughts came from, because I don't necessarily think either of my parents were anti-hunting, but I have vivid memories in high school of having conversations with friends and sharing on Facebook and MySpace that hunting is stupid. That I felt like you should just go to the grocery store and buy food like a civilized person. I was ignorant. I didn't understand hunting. I didn't understand why people would want to take care of these things themselves when you can just go to the store and buy it. It's that simple, right? I mean, I think a lot of people today honestly come from a similar background as me. If you live in the suburbs and you don't know someone that hunts, fishes, shoots, or anything like that, you probably have the same ignorant mindset that I used to have. And I wish I could say what it was that tipped the scale and had me going into hunting, but I think ultimately it was the accumulation of things over time that led to me becoming what I consider obsessed with hunting. I think things started to go this way from my childhood, being exposed to the outdoors. I was comfortable outside, seeing wildlife. I didn't mind hiking. I was very physically active. But there was no part of me at this point where I wanted to take care of myself, learn about where my food was coming from, and make an effort to procure that food myself. It wasn't until I joined the Marines where I think things started to change. I started learning how to take care of myself, learning about preparedness. I made a go bag. I had a medical kit. I wanted to be the person who was ready in case something happened. Even today, I get made fun of by some of my friends for being the prepared guy. If something breaks or we need something, chances are I have the tool on me that I can fix that thing, even if I'm jerry-rigging something together. And so I think this is when I started to go down the rabbit hole of self-sufficiency, taking care of myself, and ultimately, if I had to try and say what it was that led me down the path of hunting, I think that was it. Getting out of active duty, I switched into the reserves, and this is where a lot of this story comes in. Being in the military, by the time I got out, I had served nearly 8 years of service in between active duty and reserve time, and in that time, slowly I was exposed to hunting and these ideas. Like I mentioned earlier, I started thinking about things like self-sufficiency, having food ready, medical kits. And over time, the idea of hunting became interesting to me. It wasn't something that I actively pursued. I didn't go out of my way to do it. I never really gave it too much conscious thought. But there was part of me that was intrigued by it. I wanted to try it. But I didn't know anyone who hunted. And I think this is the case for a lot of people who grew up the way I did. Now, I moved a lot and I was constantly making new friends. I think if I stayed in one place for a long enough time, maybe I would have been able to figure out someone who was hunting, and maybe I would have been connected to this amazing passion of mine earlier in life. But that wasn't how it went. For me, it wasn't until 2017 when I was deployed that things started to come together that I would go into hunting. My best friend's name is Peter. He'll eventually be a guest on most likely several episodes of this podcast. Peter grew up hunting. He's originally from Poland. His family has a rich hunting heritage. His dad hunts. He hunts. It was just not something that came up in our conversations because I had no background in it. We would talk about cars, guns, drink a couple of beers, but hunting never really came up. Nothing serious anyway. It wasn't until I was deployed though when Peter brought up the idea of joining him on a hunt. His girlfriend at the time purchased through an outfitter an unguided hunt. Essentially, you can pay an outfitter, and this is in Montana, you can pay an outfitter to do the processing for the application for you. You can actually purchase extra preference points if you need to go that route, and it gives you a better chance of drawing a tag. And what she did was she went through this outfitter to get him an elk mule deer combination license, and he would be hunting public land but stay in this lodge. It would be a rifle hunt in November, and we would have access through some private land to access some public land. At least I think that's how it went. Honestly, I didn't really know too much back then. If I were to go back now, I would have to, we didn't even have Onyx or any mapping system back then, so I have no idea. We actually used paper maps. God help us. But anyway, he asks me if I have any interest in going on this hunt. He's never gone out west before. He's only hunted whitetails. And he didn't want to go by himself. He didn't have any hunting buddies either. His dad's not going to be able to go on that hunt with him. And I'm the only person that he knew of who might be interested, who was also in good enough shape to go on the hunt. And I never gave it conscious thought before. I never went out of my way to try and go hunting. But man, it clicked. When he asked me to do this, there was like a light bulb that went off. It was like, I need to figure out how to make this happen. There was a fire burning in me, and I needed to see if this was going to be what it was. So he gets me in touch with the outfitter. I'm emailing them because I have no ability to make a phone call. And essentially, I needed to figure out how to do an application over the next 2 months. I needed to be able to get them, I think it was my driver's license and a hunter education certificate. Well, if you've been paying attention up until this point, I've never hunted in my life. I don't have a hunter's education certificate, and I am overseas for the Marines, and in New Jersey, you need to have an in-person field day to get your hunting education. Well, that was not really possible for me. I'm a problem solver though, and there was no way I was going to let this stop things. I went down the rabbit hole. I searched every single state, and I'm like, there has to be one where I can do an online hunter education course and I don't need to do an in-person field day. And sure enough, there was. Texas, which is ironic because I live here now. But at the time I didn't. I went online, I got my hunter's education in for the state of Texas, and I emailed that over to the outfitter, and they were able to submit my application. At this point, we had to wait a few months until we would find out whether or not we drew the tags, and we waited. By the time I got back to the States, I want to say it was 2 months later, we found out that we drew our tags, and both of us were going to be going to Montana in November chasing elk and mule deer. At this point, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even own an appropriate firearm for it. At this time in my life, I owned one handgun and I owned one AR. That was it. There are no real hunting shops in the area I lived. So I went to a Dick's Sporting Goods because back then they used to sell rifles. I don't think they sell any of that stuff anymore, but it was the closest thing I had where you could buy hunting equipment. I went to a Dick's Sporting Goods, bought a Savage Trophy Hunter in .308 because .762 is a round I was familiar with from the Marine Corps, and .308 is the civilian equivalent, so I figured you can't go wrong with .308. Plenty of ammo, time-tested and true ammunition. It'll get the job done. So I purchased this .308. I start shooting with Peter to get prepared for it. Him and I make a trip all the way out to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania to go to Cabela's because I had no gear. And there is not really a lot of great places in New Jersey where you can go to buy gear. So we made I want to say it was a 3-hour trek out to Harrisburg to go to Cabela's from where I lived. And I bought whatever gear I could get. I'm going to find a picture or a video of me in Montana to show you just how woefully unprepared I was. But just like me not wanting to let being deployed and having only an internet connection stop me from getting my hunter's education, I wasn't going to let some gear slow me down either. I'll wear all of the layers I need, mismatched camo. I didn't really care. I just wanted to get out there and try and see if this was the thing for me. And even with all of that gear, everything that I bought, man, I was still unprepared. The high temperature while we were in Montana was 15 degrees, and that was at the weather station, not where we were, which was higher up. And that's not accounting for the elevation gain from going on hiking up the mountains. But man, when they say that Montana Big Sky Country, it earns that name. Everywhere you turned when you're hiking up these hills, I mean, we hiked in the dark, so I didn't get to really see the majesty of it that first day, but we were sitting on a hill ready to glass as the sun creeped up, and the sunrise over the mountains is just breathtaking. I've got plenty of pictures of it, and I'll throw some in the video if you're watching video. If you're only on audio, you can check out the video on YouTube. But I'll throw some pictures up so you can see kind of what it looked like. It was breathtaking. Being out there on the mountains, I don't know, there was just something about it. This was the first time that I had been out west that wasn't for the military. I think at this point I had been to Colorado and Washington State, and California. I've made trips out west. I've been all over the country. But this was my first time in Montana and my first time really in the mountains for all intents and purposes, on my own. Peter and I were there together. We hunted from dark to dark every single day. We managed to get on some mule deer, never saw an elk. I'm amazed that we got on mule deer because neither of us had a damn clue what we were doing. Peter had only hunted whitetails. I had never hunted before in my life. This was my first time hunting. And despite the fact that we never got anything, something just came out in me, and I knew that this is something that I needed to make part of my life for the rest of my life. I don't know if there's some primitive thing that's inside of my brain that just loves being out in nature, knowing that there's predators out there that could get me. In fact, we found mountain lion tracks circling around the tracks that we were walking in. Or maybe it was me being the predator, trying to outsmart these animals and being able to kill one, to take one home, bring that meat, and provide for myself and my family. I don't know if that's what it is, but despite the misery, the cold, all of the hiking, not really getting a lot of sleep, there's just nothing like it. I knew from that point on that I was going to be a hunter, and I would find a way to hunt every year after that. And so far, I've been able to stay true to that. I have hunted every single year since 2018 when I went on this hunt, and although I haven't been back to Montana yet, I really do hope that I'm able to get back out there. In fact, it might be a hunt that I get to do this year, but I'm going to talk about that in a future podcast. We did manage to get on some mule deer. The closest that we got was about 250 yards, which actually I would have been comfortable taking a shot at that distance. In the Marine Corps, you qualify every year shooting out to 500 yards. It's on targets, not on living creatures, but I knew that I was capable of shooting that far. The problem that we faced was the outfitter set particular antler restrictions, and I don't remember what they were, but I do know that definitively the deer that we ran into either were too far away for us to be comfortable taking a shot. I think my limit back then I probably would have said was about 300 yards, or they were not within the standards that the outfitter wanted us to stay within. So we ended up leaving Montana with nothing. We took the 36-hour drive back to Pennsylvania and then me back to New Jersey from there. And I immediately went to work figuring out how am I going to do this hunting thing every year. It was totally uncharted territory for me. It's unrealistic, in my opinion, for me to drive and reasonably hunt frequently with Peter. He lives 2.5 hours away, and that's just to get to his house, not accounting for the places that we would need to drive to actually hunt on his property. He doesn't have property. That's not accounting for where we would have to drive and hiking in to go actually hunt the places that he can hunt. I needed to figure it out on my own. And so I went down the rabbit hole of searching all the public land in New Jersey, what the types of hunting are in New Jersey, and tried to figure out what I would need to do. And I learned very quickly a couple of things. One, that rifle that I bought from Montana, absolutely useless in New Jersey. There are no rifle hunts. You have to shotgun hunt, muzzleloader, or bow. I knew nothing about shotguns. I knew even less about muzzleloaders. To this day, as of this recording, I still don't own and have never shot a muzzleloader, although I plan on it. So I decided I need to figure out this archery thing. This seems like it's the best opportunity I have. It's a long season. You can hunt from, I want to say, the middle of August to the middle of February. And New Jersey, despite the politics of the state, It's very generous with tags. Extremely dense deer populations, extremely dense bear populations, which is exactly why they had to reopen the bear hunt this year. And so I figured I would give it a shot. I found a local archery club. They are not a shop. They don't tune, they don't sell, they don't do anything. You just shoot. And what they had were these beginner's nights where you can go in and learn how to shoot a bow. It's like $10. My wife and I went and we got to shoot these like 30-pound bows where you can just finger grab it. They're compound bows and very inaccurately fling them at paper. But that was enough for me to be like, you know what? I actually kind of like this. Archery is pretty sweet. I think I might be able to figure this out. And my wife liked it too. The next week, both of us went to Dick's Sporting Goods, good old Dick's Sporting Goods. By the way, I hate them now, but back then they were the best thing that I had. And we went down there and picked up 2 Diamond Edge SB1 bows. Both of us still use those bows to this day. And although they were cheap bows, they were effective and they do the job. You know, I did not make, and I still don't make enough money that I can just throw it at whatever I want. But as with Montana and not having the best gear at the time, I didn't want to let that stop me. I think I spent $300 on each compound bow set. Both of us started practicing, both of us started shooting, and both of us actually started hunting. New Jersey is a difficult state, and maybe at some point I'll create a podcast about that. But I had to get my hunting license, then I had to get a specific permit from the state for the particular piece of public land that I wanted to hunt. It was only valid for certain dates within the season. I had to get an additional permit if I wanted to hunt for other seasons. Very convoluted. I think it's on purpose. But anyway, moving on. We hunted that season, and I'm really happy that New Jersey has such a generous season because I needed all of that time. The amount of hours that I put in to barely see deer, let alone have an opportunity to shoot one, was very high. But ultimately, it was in New Jersey this first year where I was able to see success. This deer right here, he's not going to break any record books. I think he measures out at like 95 inches or something like that. That's my first deer. That's the arrow I shot him with. And I shot him on that public land in New Jersey during the rut. I want to say it was November 16th, 2019. I'd have to look and see for sure. But this was the deer that taught me that I can do this. I intend on making a podcast dedicated to this deer hunt because although he isn't a record book deer, he holds a very special place in my heart. And he was the first of many lessons that I've had that you just can't give up and you cannot let anything slow you down. The long story short is people suck. I had to buy some new gear the week of the rut. I was able to go out and kill my first deer on a really shitty weather day. But he was out, and I was ready. I was not picky. I was very much an it's brown, it's down kind of person, and I would have shot a doe if a doe came out. But I got lucky, and he stepped out that morning. He ran about 60 yards, and yeah, that was that. But killing that first deer told me that not only did I have a passion for this, that I was very determined to do it, but I could actually do it. That first taste of success really cemented for me that I was going to be able to know where my food came from start to finish, at least as much as possible. And then I went down this rabbit hole of self-sufficiency. To this day, I have made an effort to buy as little red meat from the grocery store as possible. I have not bought beef from a grocery store at this point in 2 years, and I intend on keeping it that way. Like I said, I plan on making a podcast dedicated to that hunt. I like to keep these kind of short because, well, if I'm being completely honest, I'm a new hunter. I've only been hunting since 2018. That's 4 years. Well, as of this year, next season, it'll be 5 years. 5 hunting seasons. It'll be 6 next year. I don't have a whole lot of experience. I've only, to my name, I have killed 2 whitetail bucks, 1 pronghorn buck, and an elk bull. That's a lot, I guess, for an average hunter maybe. But when you look at the people who are on social media, the guys that are hosting all these podcasts and such, these people are killing what I killed in my entire 4-year career in 1 season. And I don't think I'm ever going to get to that point. You know, I work a normal job. I only get to go out hunting 1 week a year usually. Last year I really stretched the limit because I drew a tag I wasn't expecting in Arizona. And I went out for 2 hunts last year. But the hunting bug was cemented in me after killing that first whitetail buck. And I knew that I needed to do it no matter where I lived, no matter what was going on with my life. This was going to be part of who I am. And since then, I have now hunted in 6 states, I think. New Jersey, Texas, Arizona, Wyoming, Utah, Montana. 6 states. I've hunted in 6 states in 6 states in 5 years if we count 2023, which honestly sounds kind of crazy, but I did Utah and Arizona last year, so it makes sense. And I've chased several different species too. The reason I'm here and the reason I'm telling this story is because my life has been completely changed from what it was back in 2017. You know, I was starting to figure things out. I had some passions and ideas about what I wanted to do with my life. But that first hunt in 2018 changed the trajectory of where I was going. I can't explain what it is, what this feeling is within me when I'm hunting, when I'm out in nature, when I'm trying to chase animals, even if I don't get anything. I just love being out there. The tranquility, the peace, the disconnection from the world, but being connected with nature. There's something about it that just triggers something in me. And I wish I knew what it was. But I want to share that with people. I don't know that I have the capacity to have a large audience, and I don't know that I have the brains to figure out how to help people. But I really hope that I'm able to impact at least one person and help them realize the passion that hunting has realized within me. The reason I'm telling this story is because the person I was before that hunt in Montana in 2018 is not the same person that I am today. Now, there's a lot of things that go into that. I've done a lot of different things in my life. I've moved my wife and I halfway across the country, changed jobs since then. I've done a lot of personal growth and changes. But I know that hunting was a huge factor in that. My drive for a lot of the things that I do goes back to being able to provide for my family, knowing where that story came from, the challenge of the hunt, being out there. Even when I'm not successful, there's something inside of me that just feels more alive than anything else has ever been able to do. And I want to share that with other people. I don't know that I have the capacity to have such a huge channel like some of the other people that you probably pay attention to or watch. You know, in my career, I haven't been able to do that many hunts. And I don't know that I ever will. If I can help even one person go on a hunt and come to the realization that they have the same passion for hunting and being out in nature that I do, then I will consider this podcast a success. And I'm not talking about this episode. I'm talking about the whole EndurHunt brand and everything that I'm trying to do. If I can just help one person realize that this is something that they want to do and get as much joy out of it as I have, then I will consider this a success. I don't know that I can end it on a better note than that. So if you made it this far and you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and drop the word taco in the comments. I'm really curious how many people will actually make it this far. If you're just listening to the audio version, know that I appreciate you just as much as those who are watching on YouTube. I want to share this message as much as I can with as many audiences as I can. If you'd like to see more content and keep regular tabs on what I'm doing, I'm on Instagram at EndurHunt. I have other social media, but right now that's really the only one that I post on. So go ahead and give me a follow and send me a message or comment on one of my posts and let me know that you found me from the podcast. I'd appreciate that. Well, I'll talk to you guys next time. I'll figure that out eventually.